The silence after battle was deafening. Where moments before space had been filled with weapon fire and explosions, now only the gentle hum of the Liberty's engines broke the quiet. 13 massive Keltharian dreadnoughts drifted powerless. In the void, their crews trapped aboard ships that had become metal tombs. Captain Morrison stood on his bridge, looking at the tactical display that showed the defeated enemy fleet. His crew had won an impossible victory, but Morrison felt no joy in the sight of so much destruction. These were not evil monsters they had defeated, but living beings who had families and homes waiting for their return. "Dr. Foster, can you scan the enemy ships for life signs?" Morrison asked. Foster worked at her science station, directing the Liberty's sensors toward the disabled fleet. "Reading multiple life signs throughout all vessels, Captain. Their life support systems are failing on most ships. I estimate they have perhaps 6 hours of breathable air remaining." Morrison nodded grimly. 6 hours to save over 20,000 alien lives. It would require every resource the Liberty possessed, and then some. But there was never really a choice to make. Leaving enemies to die in space was not something humans could do. "All departments, prepare for emergency rescue operations," Morrison announced over the ship's communication system. "We have thousands of survivors who need immediate assistance. Medical teams, prepare for alien physiology. Engineering, ready all available life support equipment." Lieutenant Lisa Chen looked up from her station with surprise. "Sir, are we really going to help them? They were trying to kill us just minutes ago." Morrison turned to face his communications officer. "Lieutenant, they are shipwrecked sailors now. What they were before doesn't matter. What matters is that they need help, and we are the only ones who can provide it." The rescue operation began immediately. Chief Engineer Pete Davis worked with Dr. Foster to modify portable life support units for Keltharian biology. The aliens breathed a different mix of gases than humans, and their body temperature was several degrees lower. Without proper life support, they would die long before help could arrive from their own territory. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Karen Price prepared the Liberty's medical bay for alien patients. She had studied xenobiology during her training, but this would be her first chance to treat non-human beings. The Keltharians were reptilian in appearance, with scaled skin and multiple limbs, but their basic biological needs were similar to humans. Commander Bobby Taylor coordinated the actual rescue shuttles, using the Liberty's small craft to transport life support equipment to the disabled ships. It was dangerous work, requiring precise navigation around damaged hulls and unstable power systems, but Taylor's pilots performed with skill and courage. Admiral Vexthar sat in his darkened command center, watching through a viewport as human shuttles approached his flagship. The irony was bitter beyond words. The species he had intended to enslave was now risking their lives to save his crew. It went against everything the Empire had taught him about inferior species and their proper place in the galaxy. The first human rescue team to board the Sovereign's Wrath was led by Lieutenant Commander Wells. The tactical officer had traded his weapon for medical supplies and emergency oxygen. He found Admiral Vexthar slumped in his command chair, his breathing labored in the thin air. "Admiral," Wells said through his translator device, "we're here to help. Our medical team can treat your injured and provide life support until we can get everyone to safety." Vexthar looked at the human with confusion and suspicion. "Why? We are your enemies. We tried to destroy you." Wells knelt beside the Admiral's chair and checked his oxygen levels with a portable scanner. "Because that's what people do, sir. They help each other when help is needed. The rescue operations continued for 18 hours. Human medical teams worked alongside Keltharian survivors to treat the wounded and evacuate the most seriously injured. Dr. Price found herself performing surgery on alien patients whose biology was completely unfamiliar, guided by Keltharian medical officers who overcame their own prejudices to save their crews. Captain Morrison personally supervised the evacuation of the Admiral and his senior staff. When Vexthar was brought aboard the Liberty, Morrison met him in the shuttle bay. The alien leader was clearly expecting imprisonment or execution, but Morrison had other plans. "Admiral, I'm Captain Morrison. You'll be staying in guest quarters during your recovery. Our medical officer says you suffered some oxygen deprivation, but you should be fine with rest." Vexithar stared at the human captain with genuine bewilderment. "Guest quarters? Are we not your prisoners?" "You're shipwrecked survivors," Morrison replied simply. "When your people send rescue ships, you'll be free to go home." The psychological impact of the battle spread through the Keltharian Empire faster than the fastest starship. News that the mighty 47th Fleet had been destroyed by a single alien vessel reached the Imperial capital within days, carried by automated distress beacons. But the truly shocking news was what happened after the battle. The humans had saved their enemies. They had risked their own lives to rescue Keltharian survivors, treated their wounded, and cared for their prisoners as honored guests. It was behavior that the Empire's leaders could barely comprehend. Sub-Admiral Talvin commanded the rescue fleet sent to retrieve the survivors. When he arrived at the coordinates provided by the human ship, he found something unprecedented in Imperial history. The Liberty waited patiently beside the disabled dreadnoughts, her crew still working to keep the Keltharian survivors alive. Captain Morrison met with Talvin via video communication to arrange the transfer of survivors. The Imperial officer was clearly nervous about dealing with the humans who had achieved the impossible. "Captain Morrison," Talvin began formally, "the Empire acknowledges your assistance in this matter. Admiral Vexithar and his crews will be returned to Imperial space for proper debriefing." "Of course," Morrison replied. "We've prepared detailed medical reports for your doctors. Some of your people will need continued treatment for their injuries." Talvin hesitated before asking the question that burned in his mind. "Captain, why did you help us? Your victory was complete. You could have left us to die and continued on your way." Morrison considered the question carefully before answering. "Because leaving people to die in space would make us the monsters you thought we were. Humans fight when we must, but we don't kill when we don't have to. The transfer of prisoners took 2 days. Admiral Vexithar was among the last to leave the Liberty, and he requested a private meeting with Captain Morrison before departing. "Captain," the Admiral began hesitantly, "I have served the Empire for 3 centuries. I have conquered worlds and destroyed entire species, but I have never encountered anything like what your people did here." Morrison nodded respectfully. "Admiral, every species has the capacity for both cruelty and kindness. The choice of which path to follow defines who we are." "The Empire will not forget this," Vexthar said quietly. "Your actions here will be discussed in the highest councils. You have given us much to think about." After the Keltharian rescue fleet departed, the Liberty resumed her journey toward home. The crew was exhausted, but proud of what they had accomplished. They had not only survived first contact with a hostile alien empire, but they had shown the galaxy what humanity truly represented. Dr. Foster completed her analysis of the battle and its aftermath. "Captain, The intelligence we've gathered about Keltharian technology and tactics will be invaluable when we return to Earth. But I think the most important thing we've accomplished is showing them that there's a different way to resolve conflicts. Morrison stood on his bridge, looking out at the stars that still seemed strange and distant. Somewhere among those lights was Earth, and somehow they would find their way home. When they did, they would carry with them the knowledge that humanity's first contact with alien life had been violent, but had ended with mercy and hope. The empire that had ruled the galaxy through fear and force was about to discover that there were other ways to build a civilization. The human ship that had emerged from nowhere had indeed changed everything, not through conquest, but through the simple act of showing compassion to fallen enemies. In the years that followed, the story of the Liberty and her crew would become legend throughout the galaxy. The ship that fought back when threatened, but chose mercy when victory was achieved, proved that true strength came not from the power to destroy, but from the wisdom to build something better. Commander Zexathara walked across the bridge of his ship, the Crimson Talon. His long fingers moved over the control panels as he checked the daily reports. The ship was sleek and beautiful, with curves that flowed like water. Its red hull gleamed under the light of distant stars. For 300 years his people, the Velkans, had been the strongest force in this part of space. No one dared to fight them. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of the engines. Around him, his crew worked at their stations. They moved with the confidence of soldiers who had never lost a battle. Their bioships were fast and deadly. Their plasma weapons could cut through any armor. Every species in the galaxy knew to fear the Velkan Imperium. Zexathara looked at the star map floating in front of him. They were patrolling the edge of known space, looking for new worlds to claim. His orders were simple: find any new species and show them Velkan power. Most aliens surrendered quickly when they saw what Velkan ships could do. Those who didn't surrender simply disappeared. "Commander," called out his sensor officer, "we are approaching the Helix Nebula. All systems are working well." "Good," Zexathara replied. "Keep scanning for any ships. I want to know if even a small cargo vessel enters this area." Far away, in a different part of the same nebula, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship. The USS Defiance was nothing like the Velkan vessel. Where the alien ship was smooth and curved, the human ship was all sharp angles and hard metal. It looked like a weapon that someone had built engines onto. Jake was a tall man with short brown hair and steady blue eyes. He had been in Earth's Space Navy for 15 years. This was his first mission to the deep parts of space, far from Earth and the solar system. The Defiance was humanity's newest destroyer, built to explore and protect human interests in the galaxy. "Status report," Jake said to his crew. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Blake looked up from her station. She was the ship's tactical officer, a smart woman with red hair and green eyes. "All weapon systems are ready, Captain. Engines are running at full power. We're invisible to most sensors right now. The Defiance used special technology to hide from alien sensors. To most ships, it would look like a small cargo vessel or maybe just space junk. This was important because humanity was still learning about the galaxy. They had been watching alien ships from far away for months, studying their weapons and tactics. Jake walked to the large window at the front of the bridge. Outside, colorful gas clouds of the Helix Nebula swirled in beautiful patterns. Hidden somewhere in those clouds might be alien ships. Earth's leaders had sent the Defiance here to see what was beyond human space. "Sir," called out the navigation officer, Danny Rodriguez, "we're on course to exit the nebula in 6 hours. No contacts yet. Jake nodded. The crew of the Defiance was young but well-trained. They came from all over Earth, brought together by their desire to explore the stars. Unlike the Vulcans, humans had no experience fighting in space. But they had spent centuries fighting each other on Earth. That experience had taught them to build ships that could survive anything. The human destroyer was covered in thick armor plating. Its weapons were different from anything the galaxy had seen before. While most aliens used energy weapons like lasers and plasma cannons, humans preferred kinetic weapons. Railguns that fired metal slugs at incredible speeds, missile launchers loaded with nuclear warheads, simple weapons that used the basic laws of physics to destroy targets. Chief Weapons Officer Ryan Carter was checking his systems for the third time that day. He was a young man from Texas with a serious face and quick hands. The ship's main railgun was his responsibility. It was a massive weapon that ran almost the full length of the ship. When fired, it could send a tungsten slug flying at 12% of light speed. "All weapons are ready, Captain," Ryan reported. "The railgun is charged and the missile tubes are loaded." Jake smiled. He hoped they wouldn't need weapons on this mission, but it was good to know they were ready. Human ships were built on a simple idea. If something wanted to hurt humanity, humans would hurt it back 10 times harder. On the Vulcan ship, Commander Zexithara was growing bored. They had been patrolling for days without finding anything interesting. Most of this region of space was empty, except for a few primitive species that barely knew how to build rockets. His crew was restless, too. They wanted action, a chance to show their skills. "Commander," the sensor officer suddenly said, "I'm detecting something strange. There's a ship ahead of us, but the readings don't make sense." Zexithara moved quickly to the sensor station. On the screen, he could see a small dot moving through space. The computer was having trouble identifying it. The ship appeared to be made mostly of metal, which was unusual. Most advanced civilizations used biomaterials or energy-based hulls. "How big is it?" Zexithara asked. "About 300 meters long, much smaller than us. But, Commander, the mass readings are very high." "It's much heavier than it should be," Zexithara frowned. A heavy ship usually meant thick armor or primitive construction. Either way, it suggested a species that was not very advanced. "What kind of weapons does it have?" The sensor officer studied his readings. "I'm not sure, sir. There are several large structures on the hull, but they don't match any known weapon designs. They might be communication arrays or sensor equipment." "Probably a cargo ship," Zexithara decided. "Or maybe a primitive warship from one of the local species." Either way, this is a perfect chance to show them Vulcan power. He had no way of knowing that he was looking at one of humanity's most advanced warships. The Defiance's armor was so thick that Vulcan sensors couldn't tell what was underneath. The railgun looked like a communication dish to aliens who had never seen kinetic weapons. To the Vulcans, humans appeared to be just another weak species ready to be conquered. "Set course to intercept," Zexithara ordered. "We'll see what these aliens are made of." Both ships moved toward each other through the colorful gases of the nebula. Neither captain knew that this meeting would change the galaxy forever. The Vulcans expected an easy victory over a primitive species. The humans were about to get their first real test against alien technology. In a few hours, the universe would learn what happened when an unstoppable force met an immovable object. But first, two very different ships had to find each other in the vast darkness of space. Admiral Vexthar stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Sovereign's Wrath, watching the tiny alien vessel through the main viewer. The ship was pathetically small compared to his mighty dreadnoughts. barely the size of a maintenance pod. Its hull looked primitive and scarred, like something built by a species that had just learned to work metal. The Admiral's forearms moved with practiced precision as he studied the tactical display. His scaled skin shifted from blue to purple, a sign of mild amusement among his people. In 3 centuries of service to the Keltharian Empire, he had never encountered a species foolish enough to resist imperial authority with such a laughably weak vessel. "Sub-Commander Krelth," Vexthar called to his second-in-command. "What is your assessment of this craft?" Krelth's smaller frame hunched over the sensor station as he analyzed the readings. His yellow eyes glowed brighter as he concentrated on the data. "Admiral, the vessel appears to be some kind of scout ship or escape pod. Its power output is minimal compared to our smallest frigates. The hull composition suggests primitive metallurgy." "Weapons?" Vexthar asked. "Unknown, sir. The energy signatures are too weak to identify specific systems. If they have weapons at all, they pose no threat to our shields." Vexthar nodded with satisfaction. The Empire had conquered over 1,000 worlds using the same simple formula: show overwhelming force, demand surrender, crush any resistance. Most species submitted immediately when they saw the size and power of an Imperial fleet. Those that did not were quickly eliminated as examples to others. On board the Liberty, Captain Morrison studied the alien formation with growing concern. The ships were arranged in a perfect sphere around his vessel, each one bristling with weapon ports and energy projectors. Dr. Foster worked frantically at her science station, analyzing every piece of data their sensors could gather. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy buildup in their weapon systems," Foster reported. "Whatever they're planning, they have enough firepower to destroy a small moon." Lieutenant Commander Wells pulled up tactical projections on his screen. The alien ships moved with mechanical precision, maintaining exact distances and firing angles. Their formation was textbook perfect, designed to deliver maximum firepower while preventing their target from escaping. "Sir, they're positioning themselves for a coordinated strike," Wells said. "Classic overwhelming force doctrine. They want to end this quickly." Morrison nodded grimly. The aliens had obviously done this many times before. Their confidence was evident in every movement, every position. They expected his surrender and had prepared to destroy him if he refused. "Have you found any weaknesses in their formation?" Morrison asked. Wells hesitated before answering. "Their positioning is flawless for delivering maximum firepower, but it has disadvantages too. They're so focused on overwhelming us that they've created blind spots between their own ships. If we could somehow get into those gaps, we'd be fighting inside their formation," Morrison finished. "Dangerous, but it might give us a chance." Chief Engineer Pete Davis spoke up from the engineering station. "Captain, I've been monitoring their energy patterns. These ships are incredibly powerful, but they're also incredibly inefficient. They're putting out enough waste heat to warm a planet." Dr. Foster looked up from her calculations. "Pete's right. Their technology is advanced but crude. They've focused on raw power instead of efficiency. It suggests they've never faced an opponent that could match their technology." Morrison absorbed this information while watching the alien fleet complete its encirclement. The Keltharians clearly believed in the philosophy that bigger was always better. Their ships were massive, their weapons were enormous, and their formation was designed to showcase their overwhelming superiority. Unfortunately for them, humanity had learned to fight differently. "Open a channel," Morrison ordered. The communication system activated with a soft chime. Morrison stood straighter, knowing that his next words might determine whether his crew lived or died. "Admiral Vexithar of the Caltharian Empire," Morrison began, using the name the aliens had provided earlier. "I am Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth Navy. We are explorers, not conquerors. We have no intention of challenging your authority in this region. We ask only for safe passage to continue our journey home." The response came quickly, transmitted in the harsh, guttural language of the Caltharians, before being translated by the Liberty's computer. "Captain Morrison, your vessel has entered Imperial space without permission. Under Imperial law, all unauthorized ships must submit to inspection and registration. You will lower your shields and prepare for boarding immediately." Morrison looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These men and women had volunteered for humanity's most dangerous mission, knowing they might never see Earth again. They had survived 18 months in dimensional hell, watching friends die and equipment fail around them. Now they faced an alien empire that demanded their surrender. "Admiral Vexthar," Morrison replied, his voice calm but firm. "We respect your authority in this region, but we cannot submit to boarding. We carry sensitive Earth technology that cannot be shared with other species. We request permission to leave your territory peacefully." This time the pause was longer. Morrison could imagine the alien admiral consulting with his officers, trying to decide how to handle this unexpected resistance. Finally, Vexthar's voice returned, colder and more threatening than before. "Captain Morrison, you will comply with Imperial directives immediately. Your ship is completely surrounded and outgunned. Resistance is futile and will result in your destruction. This is your final warning." Morrison closed the channel and turned to his crew. Every face on the bridge reflected the same determination he felt in his own heart. They were humans, representatives of a species that had crawled out of caves to reach for the stars. They would not bow to alien threats, no matter how overwhelming the odds. "Mr. Wells, analyze their weapon systems one more time," Morrison ordered. "I want to know everything about how they fight." Wells worked quickly, his fingers dancing across the tactical display. "Sir, their weapons appear to be plasma-based energy projectors, extremely powerful but relatively slow firing. Their targeting systems seem designed for large, slow-moving targets. What about their defenses?" "Standard energy shields, probably designed to deflect similar plasma weapons. I'm not detecting any kinetic barriers or ablative armor." Morrison smiled for the first time since emerging into this alien galaxy. The Caltharians had built their entire military around fighting other species that use similar technology. They had never faced an opponent that fought with different methods. "Dr. Foster, what's the status of our weapon systems?" Foster checked her readings carefully. "All systems operational, sir. Railguns are at full capacity, missile tubes are loaded, and the mass drivers are online." "Kinetic weapons," Morrison said softly. "They've probably never seen anything like them." The final transmission from Admiral Vexthar arrived with the cold certainty of an execution order. "Captain Morrison, you have refused to comply with Imperial directives. Your vessel will be destroyed as an example to others who might challenge. The Empire. May your deaths serve as a warning to your species." Morrison activated the ship-wide intercom one final time. "All hands, this is the captain. We are about to engage a superior alien force that demands our surrender. We will show them that humanity does not submit to threats. We will show them that humans fight back. All stations, prepare for combat." The Liberty's crew moved to battle stations with grim determination. They were about to face impossible odds against an enemy that had conquered 1,000 worlds. But they were human, and humans had never learned how to surrender. Admiral Vexthar raised his primary arm and made the gesture that had sealed the fate of countless species across the galaxy. "All ships, open fire! Destroy the alien vessel!" The Kael'tharian fleet responded instantly. 20 massive dreadnoughts unleashed their primary weapons in perfect coordination. Brilliant beams of superheated plasma lanced through space, each one carrying enough energy to melt through a mountain. The combined firepower was devastating, designed to vaporize any target in seconds. The plasma beams struck the Liberty directly, engulfing the small human ship in a blinding flash of energy. The alien weapons poured destruction onto the target, for 10 full seconds before Admiral Vexthar gave the order to cease fire. "Target destroyed," announced Sub-Commander Krelth with satisfaction. "No debris detected." But as the energy discharge faded and the sensors cleared, something impossible appeared on their screens. The human ship was still there, its hull glowing cherry red from the heat but completely intact. Not only had it survived the concentrated firepower of an entire Imperial fleet, but it appeared to be absorbing the energy somehow. "Impossible," Vexthar whispered, his purple skin shifting to pale yellow in shock. Nothing could survive that much concentrated plasma fire. On the Liberty's bridge, Captain Morrison watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The alien weapons had been even more powerful than expected, but Dr. Foster's adaptive shielding was performing exactly as designed. "Shield status?" Morrison asked. "Holding at 85%, Foster reported from her station. "The energy absorption matrices are working perfectly. Their weapons are actually charging our backup power systems." The Liberty's shields were based on humanity's experience dealing with solar radiation and cosmic energy storms. Instead of simply deflecting energy like conventional barriers, they absorbed and redistributed it throughout the ship's power grid. The more energy the aliens threw at them, the stronger the Liberty became. "Sir, their weapon systems are recycling for another volley," Lieutenant Commander Wells announced. "But I'm reading confusion in their formation. They're not maintaining firing discipline." Morrison could see it too. The perfect Kael'tharian formation was starting to break apart as individual ship commanders tried to understand what had just happened. Some ships were adjusting their positions, others were charging different weapons, and a few were actually backing away from the impossible target. "Time to show them how humans fight," Morrison said quietly. "Mr. Wells, target there. Lead ship's weapon systems only. I want to disable, not destroy." "Aye, sir. Railguns targeted and ready. Fire." The Liberty's response was unlike anything the Kael'tharians had ever encountered. Instead of energy beams or plasma bolts, the human ship launched a barrage of solid metal projectiles. The railguns accelerated tungsten slugs to incredible velocities, turning simple metal into devastating kinetic weapons. The Admiral watched in horror as his flagship's main weapon array simply disappeared. The metal projectiles tore through their energy shields as if they did not exist, smashing into the delicate plasma conduits and energy projectors with tremendous force. Within seconds, the Sovereign's wrath had lost half its firepower. "Shields, down 20%, Krelth reported in disbelief. "How are their primitive projectiles penetrating our barriers?" Vexthar stared at the tactical display, trying to understand what was happening. The Empire's shields were designed to deflect energy weapons, not solid objects. Their enemies had always used plasma or laser technology similar to their own. No civilized species still used kinetic weapons. "All ships, adjust shield frequencies and return fire," the Admiral ordered. "Concentrate all weapons on that vessel." But the Liberty was no longer where the Kael'tharians expected it to be. Chief Navigator Sophie Miller had plotted a course that took advantage of the aliens' massive size and rigid formation. The small human ship darted between the dreadnoughts like a fighter plane weaving through a formation of bombers. Captain Morrison stood behind Wells at the tactical station, watching. Their enemies struggled to adapt to human tactics. The Caltharian ships were powerful but slow, built for overwhelming enemies with superior firepower rather than maneuvering in close combat. They're trying to adjust their formation, Wells observed, but they're getting in each other's way. Use it against them, Morrison ordered. Keep us moving between their ships. Force them to choose between shooting at us or avoiding hitting their own vessels. The Liberty accelerated toward a gap between two dreadnoughts, her engines pushed to maximum by Chief Engineer Pete Davis. As the human ship passed between the massive alien vessels, both Caltharian captains hesitated, unwilling to risk hitting their companions with missed shots. That hesitation cost them dearly. The Liberty's missile pods opened and launched a spread of smart projectiles, each one programmed to seek out specific target signatures. The missiles were not explosive warheads, but specialized penetrator rounds designed to disable rather than destroy. The first Caltharian dreadnought shuddered as missiles tore through its engine sections, carefully avoiding areas that might contain crew quarters or life support systems. The second ship lost its primary sensor array when tungsten slugs punched through the delicate detection equipment. "Sir, I'm reading massive power fluctuations throughout their fleet," Dr. Foster reported. "Their energy distribution systems are not designed for the kind of damage we're inflicting." Morrison nodded as he watched two more alien ships collide while trying to turn their massive hulls fast enough to track the Liberty's movements. The Caltharians were discovering that size and power meant nothing if you could not bring your weapons to bear on your target. "Captain, we're receiving multiple distress signals from their fleet," Lieutenant Lisa Chen announced. "Some of their ships are losing power." "Any surrender requests?" Morrison asked. "No, sir. They're still trying to coordinate an attack." Admiral Vexithar felt panic rising in his chest as he watched his fleet being systematically dismantled by a single enemy vessel. 5 of his dreadnoughts were already disabled, their weapon systems destroyed or their engines crippled. The remaining ships were struggling to maintain formation while trying to track an enemy that moved faster than anything their size had a right to move. "How are they doing this?" he demanded of his science officer. "Admiral, their ship is much smaller and more maneuverable than ours," the officer replied nervously. "Our weapons are designed for long-range bombardment of large targets. At close range against a fast-moving opponent, we cannot maintain targeting locks." "Then ram them," Vexthar snarled. "Use our mass advantage." But even this proved impossible. The Liberty seemed to anticipate every move the Caltharians made, sliding away from ramming attempts and using the aliens' own momentum against them. When one dreadnought tried to ram the human ship, it instead collided with another Caltharian vessel, both ships suffering severe damage. Commander Bobby Taylor monitored the battle from the Liberty's sensor station, tracking energy levels and damage assessments across the enemy fleet. What he saw amazed him. The humans were not just winning. They were completely dominating opponents who should have crushed them easily. "Captain, their fleet effectiveness is down to 40%, Taylor reported. "Most of their ships have lost primary weapons or maneuvering capability." Morrison allowed himself a small smile. The battle was far from over, but humanity had proven something important today. Size and numbers meant nothing without the tactical flexibility to use them effectively. "Maintain current tactics," Morrison ordered. "Keep them off balance. Let's see how long it takes them to realize they cannot win this fight." The Keltharian Empire was learning a hard lesson about humanity. Humans did not fight like other species. They did not rely on overwhelming force or superior technology. They fought smart, they adapted quickly, and they never gave up. The battle that Admiral Vexithar had expected to end in minutes was turning into a nightmare that might cost him his entire fleet. Admiral Vexithar watched his mighty fleet crumble before his eyes. 7 dreadnoughts were now drifting hulks, their weapon systems destroyed and their engines dead. The remaining ships fired desperately at the small human vessel that darted. Between them, like an angry insect, impossible to catch and surprisingly deadly. The Admiral's scaled hands gripped the command rail so tightly that his claws left deep scratches in the metal. 3 centuries of victories had not prepared him for this humiliation. The Empire's most powerful fleet was being defeated by a single enemy ship that should have been destroyed in the first minutes of battle. "Status report," Vexthar demanded, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. Sub-Commander Krelth consulted his tactical display with trembling fingers. "Admiral, we have lost 7 ships to weapons damage and collision. 3 more have severe engine damage. The remaining vessels are attempting to form a defensive sphere." "How long has this battle lasted?" the Admiral asked. 2 hours, sir. 2 hours. In 2 hours, a single human ship had reduced the 47th Imperial Fleet to scrap metal and debris. Vexithar felt his career ending with every passing minute. When word of this disaster reached the Imperial capital, he would be lucky to escape with his life. On the Liberty's bridge, Captain Morrison coordinated the ongoing battle with calm precision. His crew worked with the efficiency that came from months of training and years of military discipline. Every officer knew their role, and every system functioned exactly as designed. "Damage report," Morrison requested. "Minor hull scarring from near misses," Chief Engineer Pete Davis reported. "Shields holding at 70%. All weapon systems operational. Engine efficiency at 95%. Dr. Amanda Foster looked up from her science station, excitement clear in her voice. "Captain, I've been analyzing their weapon systems during the battle. I think I've found something interesting." Morrison moved to Foster's station and studied her data. The display showed energy flow patterns throughout the Keltharian fleet, highlighting the connections between ships and weapon systems. "What am I looking at, Doctor?" Morrison asked. "Their entire fleet operates on a shared power grid," Foster explained. "All their ships are connected through subspace energy links. They share power and coordinate their weapons through a central network." Lieutenant Commander Wells overheard the conversation and joined them. "That explains their perfect coordination at the beginning of the battle, but if they're all connected, then they all share the same vulnerabilities," Foster finished. "If we could cause a feedback pulse in their network, it would affect every ship simultaneously." Morrison studied the data more carefully. The Keltharian power network was incredibly sophisticated, but also dangerous. By linking all their ships together, they had created a single point of failure that could destroy their entire fleet. "What would we need to create this feedback pulse?" Morrison asked. Foster worked quickly at her computer, running calculations and simulations. "We would need to generate a specific electromagnetic frequency that matches their network resonance. The pulse would have to be delivered at the exact center of their formation." "How do we get close enough to the center without being destroyed?" Wells wondered. Morrison smiled grimly. "We don't get close. We let them come to us." The captain activated the ship-wide communication system. "All hands. This is the captain. We are about to attempt a final strike against the enemy fleet. Dr. Foster has discovered a way to end this battle, but it will require precise timing and coordination from every department. He turned to Wells at the tactical station. How many enemy ships are still operational? 13 ships still have weapons capability, sir. They're forming up for what looks like a final coordinated attack. Perfect, Morrison said. That's exactly what we need them to do. Admiral Vexthar had reached the same conclusion. With his fleet scattered and damaged, only a concentrated assault had any chance of destroying the human ship. He ordered his remaining vessels to form a tight attacking formation, all weapons aimed at the center where the Liberty would be trapped. All ships, close formation, the Admiral commanded. Concentrate all fire on the enemy vessel. We will overwhelm their defenses through sheer volume of fire. The surviving Keltharian dreadnoughts moved into position, their massive hulls forming a sphere of destruction around the Liberty. For the first time in the battle, the human ship seemed trapped, surrounded by enemies on all sides with no room to maneuver. They're closing the trap, Wells observed. 13 ships in perfect formation, all weapons aimed at us. Distance to formation center? Morrison asked. Chief Navigator Sophie Miller checked her calculations. 2,000 meters. And closing, sir. Dr. Foster, are you ready? Morrison asked. Foster worked frantically at her station, fine-tuning the electromagnetic pulse generator that would either save them or destroy them. The device was experimental technology designed for disabling enemy electronics at close range. Using it against an entire fleet was completely untested. Almost ready, sir. I need 30 more seconds to calibrate the frequency. The Keltharian ships opened fire as one, their plasma beams converging on the Liberty's position. The small human ship was caught in a crossfire that would have vaporized a moon, energy beams striking from every direction simultaneously. But Morrison had one final surprise for the Empire. All power to forward shields, he ordered. Emergency acceleration, straight up. The Liberty shot upward through the center of the Keltharian formation like a bullet. Her engines pushed beyond their design limits. The sudden movement caught the aliens completely off guard, their carefully aimed weapons missing their target and striking each other instead. Now, Dr. Foster, Morrison commanded. Foster activated the electromagnetic pulse generator, sending a precisely calibrated wave of energy into the center of the enemy formation. The pulse was invisible to the naked eye, but devastating to electronic systems. It raced through the Keltharian power network at the speed of light, carried by their own energy distribution system. Pulse away, Foster announced. Impact in 3 seconds. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The electromagnetic wave struck the central power node of the Keltharian network and began to cascade through every connected ship. Energy conduits overloaded, weapon systems exploded, and shield generators failed in chain reactions throughout the fleet. Admiral Vexthar felt his flagship shudder as the feedback wave reached the Sovereign's wrath. Control panels exploded in showers of sparks. The lights flickered and died, and the massive ship's engines fell silent. Around him, his surviving fleet suffered the same fate. All systems failing, Krelth reported in horror. Power grid collapse across the entire fleet. Within minutes, the pride of the Keltharian Empire was reduced to 13 drifting hulks, their crews trapped aboard ships that had become their prisons. The mighty 47th Fleet, which had conquered worlds and destroyed civilizations, had been defeated by a single human vessel. Captain Morrison watched the destruction with mixed feelings. Victory was sweet, but he took no pleasure in the suffering of defeated enemies. The battle was over, but now came the harder task of dealing with the aftermath. All stop, Morrison ordered. Stand down from battle stations. Prepare rescue operations.